I'm Caroline Hyde. This is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, earnings season is around the corner, just as volatility is picking back up in the markets. What to expect as tech giants begin to report results. Plus, the next frontier for hackers could be outer space. We'll focus on NASA's biggest cybersecurity challenges this hour. And HBO's Silicon Valley is back for a fourth season. We'll speak with executive producers Judge and Alec Berg on how much influence they get from the real tech scene. First to our lead. After a strong start to the year, global market volatility has come back into the fold amid rising skepticism over the Trump trade. Tech stocks were among the biggest benefactors of the recent rally. So where do things stand now? And what will happen with earnings results just around the corner? Let's discuss with none other than Abigail Doolittle, Bloomberg News stocks reporter in New York, and Corey Johnson, Bloomberg editor at large. Guys, I just clicked on to my S&P 500. You go into the MRR function, my particular favorite. HP Inc., number one performer.
Member-ranked returns. Yeah, HP had a big move today after news from Gartner said that of all the PC companies, HP saw the biggest gain in sales in the most recent period, and so you saw the stock responding in size today.
I mean, at the moment, it's trading at the highest since 2 years. DXC Technology, another tech company, also doing well, up 2.5%. Abigail, talk us through, as volatility starts to ramp up, we're seeing it in the VIX, the so-called fear gauge that you have in terms of options trading. What are we seeing across the technology spectrum?
Well, very interesting, Caroline. We have had that VIX popping higher now 5 days in a row at levels last seen right around the election, and we can remember the volatility back then. So investors are very uncertain, and it's really bleeding through into tech. And this stands out for the fact that technology right now is the best sector this year, really holding up that Trump trade as the financials start to round down. But get this, the S&P 500 technology index, Caroline, is now down 9 days in a row. So we have some investors moving away from technology shares, especially the chips sector. The SOX, the semiconductor index, down 1.5%, more than a 1.5% on the day, really taking a bit of a hit. And there's lots of talk about the idea that this sector, the chips, that has been so hot over the last year, up almost 50% over that time period before this little bit of a move down. That valuation is high here. And in fact, Anand Srinivasan, a Bloomberg intelligence analyst, yesterday told me that seasonally this is the weak time. And right now the SOX is actually on pace for its worst month since last April, to Anand Srinivasan's point that this is a rough time. So he says that maybe this supply chain shakeup that we're seeing for Apple, that has a lot of these chip stocks down, could just be the trigger for a bit of a pullback, even a correction that some have been watching for in this frothy sector.
I mean, talking of frothy sector, this isn't just a US phenomenon, guys. I'm looking at the stock 600. If you're looking at year to date, it's the second best performing. We're seeing on the European gauge up 12%. Similar moves in Asia. It's the best performing industry group as well. Here's your GRR function on the stock 600. Corey, how much anticipation, therefore, is there of earnings season around the corner?
Well, I think it is an interesting time for earnings. Right? So we've seen the market respond principally for a hope of a policy that has yet to come true, right? We didn't get a healthcare change. We haven't got an infrastructure spending plan. We don't have tax cuts in place. We don't know what they're going to be. The market has responded across really all sectors, but technology chief among them, rallying into that. Now we're entering a period here, the second quarter. Abigail was talking about sort of the semiconductor supply space and how this can be a tough time for them. Second quarter can be dicey for those companies. So I think that guidance always reigns supreme when earnings come out, but guidance is going to be really important here because the second quarter can be weak for a lot of companies, particularly in enterprise tech. Add to that, of course, we've got this Trump trade, this rally at all these stocks without the necessary results. So was consumer confidence, was enterprise confidence strong enough to sell tech? Was tech selling in Europe, which Europe is so important to tech, to U.S. tech companies? And those are big open questions here. The market had already assumed that those things have happened, but we won't really know until the earnings roll out. And I think that's why you see some nervousness and maybe a little selling on the margin in the last couple of weeks.
We've got Netflix coming out next week, ASML in Europe. You've got TSMC and Infosys in Asia just as soon as tomorrow. So earnings season really isn't upon us. Abigail, talk to us just offside of earnings, though. There's a big story out there about BlackBerry today. It seems a bit of a coup in the courts, well, in arbitration.
Yeah, a big day for BlackBerry, up more than 15% on the session. best day since 2015. This on the news that they won a more than $800 million lawsuit against Qualcomm, one of those Apple suppliers. So Qualcomm taking a hit, a double hit, not just on the overall chip weakness, but also on losing this lawsuit. BlackBerry, though, of course, down from multi-year highs. But today, quite a pop for one of my old, at least, phone makers. I wish I could still use one of those with that great little touch screen down there, or the screen on the bottom, the help me out.
You can get them a keyboard.
Yeah, the keyboard. There you go. I used to love it. You could use it in any circumstance.
You can clip them on, you know. In Europe, there's a startup that you can buy a clip-on keyboard. So if you wanted to do it onto your Apple phone or indeed onto your Android device.
Good to know. I should put that right onto my iPhone. That would help me in some situations for sure. But yes, BlackBerry having a great day. And again, Qualcomm lower on losing that lawsuit. And again, the overall weakness in tech. And if I could return back to the chips, you know, one point to be made here is around valuation. We have a great chart in the Bloomberg that really highlights the situation here and why Anand Srinivasan and some other analysts out there, including Dan Russo over at Needham, a technical analyst, he thinks that the markets could be a little bit vulnerable in the near term on the chip sector. This is G#BTV 7667. In blue, we have the S&P 500's PE. We see it around 22 times, 21.6 times to be precise. In white, we see the SOX up there at 27 times, well off the highs up here, right around 32 times, but nonetheless, a pretty big divergence to the S&P 500. So if that valuation keeps coming back in, especially on this seasonally weak Q2 that Corey was just alluding to, you could see this sector drag perhaps on the overall markets. And the question there, you know, the Trump trade right now, the best sector are the banks, but the banks had their worst month in March since the Brexit. Tech is the best this year, but now starting to round down those 9 down days. So if both of those sectors start to falter, it could be interesting to see what happens for the whole reflation rally. It could just reverse.
And luckily, we have both of you here to analyse it day in, day out, and I have you throughout the earnings season as well. Abigail Doolittle, Bloomberg News stocks reporter. Fantastic analysis as ever. Corey Johnson, Bloomberg editor-at-large. Thank you very much indeed. Now, another high-profile departure at Uber. Rachel Whetstone, who led policy and communications under Kalanick, resigned on Tuesday after almost 2 years at the company. She ran the company's PR team and supervised lobbying efforts with governments around the world. This is one of the several departures for high-level Uber executives this year. Now, coming up, the number of late-stage venture-backed companies is shrinking, but we'll speak with one bucking the trend, the CEO of Qualtrics, just closing its latest round at a valuation of $2.5 billion. This is Bloomberg. Amazon's focus on artificial intelligence is paying off. CEO Jeff Bezos explained the benefits of AI in his annual letter to shareholders. The technology is helping the company to deliver more goods, create new tools in its cloud computing division, and, of course, enhance its voice-activated assistant, Alexa. Bezos also reiterated the company's commitment to continue to invest in machine learning. Now, in the latest tech funding board, enterprise software maker Qualtrics raised $180 million in its latest financing. That puts the company's valuation at $2.5 billion. This round comes as the number of later-stage venture-backed companies is perhaps shrinking. Check out the Bloomberg US Startups Barometer in my terminal right now. It shows the market is actually down almost 30% from its highs back in 2015 and down some 20% since December. If you go to the B Startup function on your Bloomberg, it really does dictate how the sentiment is for startups in VC approaches and indeed exits and funding rounds. Now, joining us from Salt Lake City, Qualtrics CEO Ryan Smith is here for an exclusive interview, a man who bucks this particular trend as others are struggling to get funding. You didn't at all, $180 million, congratulations. Why do you think you managed to get on board such stellar investors as we see the likes of Accel, Insight Ventures and Sequoia?
Well, first, thanks for having me, Caroline. Look, it's a good trend, I think. With our investors who are coming in, they've been our investors along the way, and we just launched something called an experience management platform, and we believe the world's going to be competing on experiences in the future, and they're ready to back it. We're a 15-year-old company, and we're at scale. We're already cash flow positive, and we have been the whole time. And I think what we're seeing is just a little bit of a division between, some of the high-funded growth companies that have kind of had a little bit of hiccup between $1 and $200 million in revenue, and those that can get through that. And I think those are great bets for VC companies.
And do you think that many need to show now this path to a clear business plan, to revenue? You have it at, what, $250 million, to cash flow positive. Is that really what the VCs, the backers, are wanting to see?
Yeah, I think you've got to have a definite path towards that, and as well as a market in front of you when you get to that point, because they're obviously looking for a multiple, not a percentage on a return. And that was very clear. And so I think our VCs saw both of those. They said, wow, this company's actually accelerating when they get to be this size. And they're already looking at it and being able to comp it to public companies that are going out right now. And so there's not a lot of risk in the model. And so I think that helps a lot.
Talk to me about the public companies that are going out right now. As you mentioned, Okta just took to the market an IPO. It's an enterprise software company, and it's, well, what is it? Valued at less than you are. And we're seeing the likes of MuleSoft came to the market. Why, when your current valuation is so large at $2.5 billion, did you decide that private funding was still the way to go?
Well, actually, if you think about it with like MuleSoft and Twilio and Atlassian, a lot of these really good public companies now, we're all able to do this and take a pre-IPO round that was beneficial. And, you know, that's for helping employees and liquidity and putting some money on the books. And if you can do that, it's a special thing. And so we jump through that.
And so therefore, it begs the question, the IPO is the next thing to be being eyed. And do you have an idea of the sort of time frame?
No, I think, I mean, the good thing about Qualtrics and being cash flow positive and the scale we are, we can really look at the window that we feel comfortable with. I'm not smart enough to time the market. And, you know, we built this thing for a long time. And so we've got a great team at Qualtrics, and we're going to go out and lock arms. And the IPO is not our final destination. We're much more concerned about being public and what the next 10 years look like. I've been doing this since I was, you know, a junior in college 15 years ago, and I want to do this for the next 15 and 20 years. So the IPO is just the next step. And this was a great step to get there.
What do you think becoming public would add? I mean, is it an element of discipline? Is it an element of another cash injection? What are the upsides?
Well, I think if you look at the announcement, we also added is our audit chair, Murray Demo, who was the CFO of Adobe and now the current CFO of Atlassian. And just working through the preparation, it's going to make you a better company. And I think that's the case in Qualtrics. It's definitely making us a better company as we go through this all the way around. And, you know, as we're looking at good companies that are able to do this and actually be public and do well after that, that's the goal. That's the goal. And I think that it's definitely the next step.
And I'm looking at the beautiful background behind you, Salt Lake City. It's just a short flight from Silicon Valley. But Ryan, what was the reason why you didn't base yourself here, or indeed in another significant tech hub, dare we say? And what is your idea of global outreach as well?
So we are a global company. I mean, we've got 10 offices. We have 200 folks up in Seattle. We're all over. I mean, in Europe and in Asia. So we've got a great global footprint, and we've been investing really hard into that expansion. But me personally, I mean, we started in Utah, in Silicon Slopes, and we love it here. I mean, I love it. This is a great place to raise family. It's a great place to call home base. And reality is I can get to San Francisco at times a lot faster than someone in San Jose.
Silicon Slopes, I love it. And yeah, sometimes flying is always that much quicker than the car. Qualtrics CEO Ryan Smith, congratulations on the funding round, and thank you for spending some time with us. Now, the New York Auto Show is underway and coincides with a milestone moment for the car industry. Earlier this week, Tesla surpassed GM in the market cap for the first time to briefly take the crown as top US automaker. Now, the share price has since come down, but it sparked conversation about whether the bullishness behind CEO Elon Musk is warranted. Earlier, Bloomberg's David Weston spoke with Daimler board member Britta Seeger about the rise of electric vehicles.
Well, I think you in the US, you as well have different market and different situation, more on the West Coast and the East Coast. So it's a trend that we have to monitor very, very closely, yes? So, and I think a big portion into is that we have to create the request by the customers by delivering much more offers, so more different product portfolio. This is why we still truly believe into growth. Yeah, until 2025, we will deliver 10 additional battery electric driven vehicles. So we continue to believe in this trend and in this change.
So you raise a very important point. How much of it is customer demand, saying we really want electric vehicles? How much of it is governments, including the U.S. government, encouraging people to move into electric vehicles?
Well, yes, currently, I mean, if government helps, at the moment, yes, there is a market with stronger requests. But we truly believe this will change over time.
So it will be the customer ultimately that drives it?
Yes, because it's not only incentive-driven in future, but there are many countries where we have the discussion that they will shut down cities. So people and customers are looking for how can I be mobile in the future, and the battery electric driven vehicle will be one of the big answers to this.
Last question.
Yeah.
Tesla has just passed General Motors in market cap and passed Ford. Does it bother you that Tesla is so large in their market cap?
I mean, you know, our industry is about competition, right? Yep. And I think competition is very fruitful, yeah? And sometimes you have new competitors. We are very confident with the answers we are producing, and at the end of the day, we have to produce and offer things the customers will love.
The maker of Mercedes seeing the upside. That was Daimler board member Britta Seeger speaking with Bloomberg's David Weston. And speaking of Tesla, well, the company says it's searching for independent directors after influential group of investors voiced concern about the board members' ties to CEO Elon Musk. The California State Teachers Retirement System and 4 other investors wrote a letter Monday to Tesla's lead independent director. However, Musk tweeted earlier that he already announced during the SolarCity merger that Tesla was adding more independent members and that this letter has nothing to do with that decision. When Bloomberg's Dana Hull asked if he'll add 2, he replied, yeah. Now coming up, US-Russian relations usually make no difference to the astronauts working together on the International Space Station. But with renewed focus on Russian hacking, how is NASA securing its data? We'll discuss next. This is Bloomberg. In this edition of Out of This World, the next frontier for hackers could be outer space. That's the top concern of NASA's cybersecurity unit, which has the unique task of securing things like email service on Earth, but also the massive amounts of data beamed back and forth from its 65 spacecrafts. Bloomberg News national security reporter Nafisa Saeed spoke to NASA's Chief Information Security Officer and joins us from Washington with more. And Nafisa, fascinating new role that this female is taking, and talk to us about what indeed she's like and the steps that they have to take. Why would NASA be different from other government departments to secure?
Right, so in some ways NASA shares things in common. They have personal information of people. They have email networks, which most federal agencies have. But imagine they have 20 facilities, labs, space flight centers all around the country in the US that they have to take care of. Then they share information with other space agencies like Russia, Japan, the European Space Agency. So there's a lot of data going back and forth. And that's only what we're talking about on Earth. Then you have all of the information and all of the equipment that they have out in space. So we're really talking about a whole other realm that doesn't include all the networks here on Earth.
And so you spoke with Jeanette Hannah Ruiz. I apologize if I'm not saying her name quite correctly, but Chief Information Officer in charge of cybersecurity. What is her key concern over at NASA?
Right. So she just started not too long ago, and so she's kind of setting the agenda there. So she says we need to get control of our network internally first. And so let's say, she said it's a matter of time before someone hacks something in space. So that would be kind of, let's say, her nightmare scenario. If a hacker was able to actually hack into a satellite or something in space and, take over controls and, do something with that, or even take ransom of that data in space and, make the US pay. But really, I think the big concern, she said, that's realistic right now in terms of a major concern is the data flow and communications between what's in space and what's here on Earth. So you have these communication flows going back and forth. And so hackers could, try to get into what's happening here on the ground. They call them ground stations, or that flow. So she says they're really trying to secure and harden those kinds of streams.
I mean, quite fascinating, some of the statements she made in your piece. I urge all our viewers to go and read it online. It says, we see ourselves as a very attractive target. It's almost as though she's baiting the hackers, though, there. But given the current state of geopolitics, Nafisa, what about the relationship with Russia? Because it's actually a close one, isn't it, between NASA and the US and, indeed, Russian astronauts. Is that in any way going to change?
Oh, yes, it's incredibly close. And if anything, publicly, NASA is very open about the work it does with Russia. The U.S. doesn't have any shuttles anymore. We don't actually launch humans into space from the U.S. We do it with Russia from their Soyuz capsules, or what they're called, from Kazakhstan, and they go up to the International Space Station. So the U.S. is very open about the kind of work it does with Russia, also information sharing. And the U.S. actually has a bunch of offices in Russia. So it was interesting to hear from the cyber chief of how they have teams based there to monitor U.S. networks, but also send people from here to monitor that as well. So we still have publicly this great cooperation that we hear about. But at the same time, we might be hearing about new initiatives from NASA. The Trump administration has already indicated that it wants a more ambitious space program and has asked NASA to speed up missions to send humans back to space.
Nafisa Saeed, thank you. Great analysis. Bloomberg News national security reporter. This is Bloomberg.
I'm Mark Crumpton. You're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's start with a check of your first word news. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg held talks in a joint press conference with President Trump at the White House. The visit comes during increased tensions between Moscow and Washington. Stoltenberg says NATO's approach to Russia must be firm and predictable.
That means that we have to invest in our collective defense. That's exactly what we are doing. Deploy more troops in the eastern part of the alliance, increase the readiness of our forces, and increase defense spending. And I welcome the very strong message from President Trump on the importance of increased defense spending.
President Trump, who was critical of NATO during the campaign, today said the alliance is, quote, no longer obsolete. Former Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad unexpectedly filed to run in the country's presidential election. That's despite being advised not to do so by the country's supreme leader. The May 19th election is seen by many as a referendum on the 2015 nuclear agreement with the West. Thousands of South Africans mark the 75th birthday of President Jacob Zuma today with a protest. The opposition increased calls for his removal after he dismissed the nation's finance minister. South Africa also postponed a no-confidence vote on Zuma today. Security is being increased outside churches in Egypt ahead of this weekend's Easter holiday. It comes after twin church bombings in two cities killed 45 people. Egypt declared a 3-month state of emergency following the Palm Sunday attacks. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,600 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. It's just after 5:30 p.m. Wednesday here in New York, 7:30 Thursday morning in Sydney. My colleague David Fickling has a look at the markets. David, good morning.
Good morning, Mark. And here in Australia, futures on the ASX 200 index are pointing down about 0.5 percentage points. In Japan, on the Nikkei, down about 0.3 points. Today, we're going to be looking at Taiwan Semiconductor. Of course, it's duking it out with Intel for title of the world's biggest semiconductor company by market cap. But it's been a victim of the weaker US dollar. Sales in the first quarter missed their sales target, and analysts expect to see the weakest performance for earnings quarter on quarter since 2013 today. We're also going to be looking at fast retailing. Owner of Uniqlo not going quite so fast. After growing sales at more than 20% a year for 3 years, they slowed to 5% last year, and they look to slow further this year. We'll be watching them. They're the worst performer in the MSCI Asia Pacific Retail Index. I'm David Fickling in Sydney. I'll hand you back to Bloomberg Technology next.
This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Caroline Hyde. And as we discussed at the top of the show, stocks have had a strong start to the year until the recent pickup in volatility. And that's helping to build anticipation for upcoming earnings results. And as you can see, currently, tech shares remain the standout, despite that sector falling for the past 9 sessions. This is the S&P Information Technology Index outperforming the broader market so far this year. In fact, tech is the second best performer in Europe and the top performer in Asian markets as well. And we'll have full coverage, of course, of tech giants reporting earnings next week. We'll be hearing from Netflix, IBM, Qualcomm, many more. Remember, TSMC and Infosys tomorrow from Asia. Now, Silicon Valley, and the HBO satire of the tech industry, is returning for a 4th season, premiering on Sunday, April 23rd. Now, ahead of the highly anticipated season debut, we had the chance to catch up with Mike Judge and Alec Berg. They're the executive producers of the show. I started by asking about Mike's previous experience as an engineer himself and how much of an influence it plays into the plot. Take a listen.
Quite a bit. I mean, I was an engineer up here. It was a long time ago, though, so things have changed. I think the characters are kind of the same, but or similar. But yeah, we do a lot of research. We come up here. Especially since the show's come out, we have so many people that have actually reached out to us and liked the show. So yeah, it's just a lot of research and a lot of work to try to get it right.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier that people have seen the show, because season 1 we tried to ask a lot of questions and people almost literally ran away from us. But now it feels like people kind of get the tone of the show and they understand that we're trying the best we can to make it somewhat realistic. So
the current state of affairs, I mean, what's so fascinating about the show, and the reason so many people like the authenticity it has, is it does show the short-term nature of things, and quite often that we can be on a house of cards in many ways, right, and look at some of the backlash that we're starting to see against some of the pin-up startups that we've been cooing over for 2016, and now we're starting to see the ramifications, say for Uber, for example. Do you actually foresee those sorts of storylines entering in further episodes and further series that we see for Silicon Valley?
yeah, I mean, to an extent. Like, we try pretty hard not to do one-for-one representations of real-world stories, and it's also the production schedule. We write things ideally months before we shoot them, and we shoot them months before we air, so it's a little hard to be topical on our show. And we're a little afraid that if we do the big obvious jokes, that somebody else will have gotten to them before we air.
Well, how about politics, though, and administration? The relationship of Silicon Valley and Washington is perhaps going through a change. Is that something that we've got 4 years of that, at least?
Well, we do have something involving a government agency this season, but it would not have been affected. Oh, maybe we'll be affected by the election. I don't know. Anything could happen now, I guess. But no, like Alex said, I mean, we're working pretty far ahead of it. So we kind of, we're not like the Daily Show or something. We can't just come out and make fun of politics. So it's usually sort of stories that sort of, as they say, evergreen, could happen kind of anytime.
And do you think personalities, driving forces, the kind of egos or lack thereof that you sometimes get in Silicon Valley remain the same? You were saying how sometimes the characters are similar to those when you were here as an engineer. Yeah,
I mean, I think, somebody like Paul Allen could exist now in a startup, and there's, I mean, everybody's different, but there are similar archetypes. I mean, that I think have always, at least since I was in tech, that I kind of recognize, oh, that's just like so-and-so, when I was at a startup, so.
And even if you make fun of them, a lot of them are sort of impervious to it. Like, there was a joke that we did a lot season 1 where everybody always talks about how they're making the world a better place, and that's just a de facto requirement of being in the tech business, is what you're doing is making the world a better place. And then when we were doing research for subsequent seasons, we'd visit companies and they'd go, oh, that was so funny, that thing where you made fun of people for saying they're making the world a better place. But we really are making the world a better place. And there was just no realization. There was no sense of irony about it at all. Yeah.
When you do have the certain cameos, I think Dick Costolo's been with you. We've had Dropbox CEO join in on the fun. Is that something you want to continue to thrive throughout the next series? And do they sometimes get the irony? Do they help feed you with more content?
Oh yeah, I mean, Evan Spiegel was in the show. He was actually a really good actor, and he's given us a lot of great stories.
Yeah, I think by and large, I mean, we always talk about like when the movie Spinal Tap came out, the initial thought was like, oh, musicians are going to hate this movie, but musicians love that movie.
Yeah.
And I think we found it's sort of the same with this show, that as much as we're skewering tech stereotypes, people in the business seem to appreciate being made fun of.
Especially if you do it, if you're accurate about it, if you're authentic about it, I think they appreciate, oh, someone took the time to pay attention to all this, even though you are making fun of them. I don't know, we've mostly gotten away with it, I think, without being hated too much.
Yeah, nobody's really lost their mind.
Yeah.
Do you get little sort of emails potentially? Do you get requests to be covered, and you're like, no, you're really not quite big shot enough yet?
We have had a few people.
Yeah.
We've had a few people pitch to us. It's usually the people's people who call us, and a lot of times it's sort of phrased as if they're doing us a favor, as if like if we play our cards right, they can give us access to so and so.
But they give us this elaborate storyline that
Right.
either isn't good or funny, or there's a little bit of arrogance in the tech world of like, well, let's help Hollywood out here and give them a storyline.
Give them a steer.
Yeah.
But,
How much, you talk of Evan Spiegel, Snap, of course, just listed, Snapchat, the owner of, LA-based. Do you think we're starting to really start to see an integration of technology and media have been so at each other's hearts, but we're seeing the technology effects and disruption to a certain extent of your own businesses, of Hollywood itself. Do you think that that's helping with your storyline?
Oh, well, I think so, probably, because it's happening more and more in our backyard. I mean, we shoot on the Sony lot in LA, which is, we are not a Sony show, we're a Time Warner show, but we rent space on the Sony lot. And in the span of about 5 days last year, there were rumors that Google was going to buy Sony and Apple was going to buy Time Warner. So we were going to go from being a Time Warner show on the Sony lot to being an Apple show on the Google lot in the span of
and poking fun at both of them all the time.
Yeah, so
right.
it's spreading. It's coming.
Suddenly we'll just stop poking fun at those two companies.
Yeah, right.
Great fun to interview. That, of course, was Mike Judge and Alec Berg, the executive producers of HBO's Silicon Valley. And we're excited to announce that Bloomberg Technology will be making a cameo in the upcoming 4th season. Be sure to catch the season 4 debut, HBO, Sunday, April 23rd. Now, the CEO of London's first fintech unicorn says he wouldn't have chosen London for his headquarters today if he were founding the company all over again. The reason? Brexit. Tavit Hinkras made the comments at a fintech conference meant to showcase the UK as the world's #1 hub for financial tech innovation. Now, Hinkras cited the uncertainty of leaving the European Union as damaging for the business, something he told us also warned when he joined us in October.
Now the whole ecosystem in London is really worried about what is going to happen. So being in this limbo state of in between actually is the worst. So we're worried about talent. Can we still keep on hiring people from abroad? What's going to happen to regulation? What's going to happen to passporting? So all of these things which still need to be figured out.
Fascinating. Now, coming up, could Seoul be the next Silicon Valley? We'll take a deeper look into the country's tech landscape next. This is Bloomberg. Now to a Bloomberg scoop. Amazon considered a takeover of Whole Foods last fall, but didn't pursue the deal. According to a person with knowledge of the situation, the e-commerce giant considered whether Whole Foods would help energize its push into groceries. Decided against it. Now, South Korean news has been dominated by a series of scandals in recent months as allegations of corruption led to the impeachment of the country's president, Park Geun-hye, and the arrest of Samsung executive Jae-won Lee. But before all of this, President Park had been focused on a so-called creative economy push. It was a way to integrate science and technology with industry, creating jobs and strengthening the economy. So how has South Korea's tech landscape evolved? Joining us now is Bernard Moon, co-founder of Sparklabs Global Venture. Bernard is also co-founder of the Sparklabs startup accelerator in South Korea. And for you, this is what I understand you said, really, it's startup fever. It continues.
Yeah, it definitely continues. I mean, it's been interesting. It's been evolving over the past 5 years. I mean, 5 years ago, you would never see top talent from Samsung or even McKinsey's offices in Seoul leave to do a startup. But that's definitely been a growing trend over the past several years.
And this has always been a very tech-heavy, tech-savvy, wired-up city. Seoul, I imagine everyone's got the latest technology piece of equipment in their hands. But what about the entrepreneurs? You mentioned that they're coming from other key tech giants or consultancies. What sectors or verticals do they tend to focus in on if you've got such a juggernaut as Samsung dominating the entire GDP of a country, let alone the city?
Well, surprisingly, Samsung is not that much of an influence in the startup ecosystem.
Interesting.
Because most of the innovation comes from the software side or the internet side. So even since the mid-90s, it's been more online gaming, it's been mobile platforms, mobile apps, and more recently it's been AI plays, enterprise software. So it's not really so much on the hardware side or mobile devices.
And what about the money, the ecosystem, in terms of the startup culture is there, you're helping furnish them with guidance at the accelerator and perhaps a bit of cash when you're at the actual venture area. But are there a lot of VCs internally within South Korea? Are you getting money moving in from the US and abroad?
A majority of the capital does come from within South Korea. So there's a healthy ecosystem of angel investors and seed funds. There's a decent amount of Series A funds, but that definitely needs to grow further. And then where the real gap is in the market is sort of at the mid stage. So
Scale up.
Yeah, at the B and C rounds. And then the late stage, and also there's a lot of sort of mid-sized PE funds that also invest in late stage VC. But then, so there's definitely this gap in the middle of the market. So.
We're just hearing there from Tarvat Henrikus, who is the CEO and leader of TransferWise. It's a key fintech startup in London, sort of saying, I wish I wasn't in London anymore because of the geopolitics. He likes being there now, but he perhaps wouldn't have founded the company there. I'm looking at the geopolitics that's affecting South Korea right now. If I go into my Bloomberg WCRS, this is a world currency ranker, South Korean won down 0.7% over the last 5 days. It's the worst performing major currency. How much does that affect the entrepreneurs, do you think, and the stability of the ecosystem?
I don't think it has affected it at this time in the short term. I mean, obviously there's a saber rattling right now between the Trump administration and North Korea. What has more affected, I guess, the market right now is sort of the unofficial blockade of content and certain commerce between China and South Korea because of the THAAD missiles. So that's been interesting. It's sort of uncertain whether it'll be longer term than this, but it has affected the major content producers, whether it's TV, music, movie, and also online games. I mean, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the top 2 of the 3 revenue-generating online games in China are South Korean companies. And these single games, they generate over $1 billion in revenue a year.
So that leads me on to my next question of how global South Korean companies, startups go. Because obviously they've got a population within their own country that they're serving. Are we seeing a global mentality as you see within particularly the United Kingdom or France, where they're smaller nations and they realize they've got to get out and get quick into the world?
Yeah. I don't think you see a full global mentality yet. It's more of a regional play for a lot of these startups. I mean, Korea's sort of an interesting market. It's a smaller nation of 50 million, even though it's the 11th largest economy in the world. But it's sort of this, what I call like a tweener market. It's in between, because even for a country of 50 million, it's the 6th or 7th largest e-commerce market in the world.
Wow.
For luxury goods, it's 4th or 5th, depending on how you categorize it. And a few other verticals, it's top 10 in the world. So you can create multi-billion-dollar tech companies just within the Korean market. And then a lot of these companies expand regionally within Asia.
We're looking at some of the portfolio that Sparklabs Global Ventures has. Name some names, name some sectors that if I was about to fly over and go and look for some of the real tech talent, who do you think will be making an impact globally or indeed regionally that we should look out for?
Well, there's definitely, one of our companies came out of our accelerator, and that we actually also did a follow-on on our global seed fund, is Mimibox. It's doing very well. This past year, they closed a Series C of total 126 million.
They do?
They do 3 legs. They do beauty. They initially started as a beauty box. Then they do regular e-commerce in beauty products. And then now they have a 3rd leg where they do a private label business for beauty products. And they've done well in Korea and China, but they've been recently affected, and also in the US.
So one to watch. The geopolitics with China is perhaps one that we should pay more attention to, but certainly doesn't seem to be slowing it down too much at the moment. Thank you very much indeed. It's been wonderful to get the inside of the country. Sparklabs Global Venture co-founder Bernard Moon, who gets out there once a quarter. Thank you for joining. Now coming up, the countdown is on for the release of the Samsung Galaxy S8, and we have a sneak preview. This is Bloomberg. Now, Burger King unveiled a new ad that targets Google Home devices. In a 15-second clip, an actor laments the commercial isn't long enough to explain everything that's in a Whopper. So he leans into the camera and says,
"Okay, Google, what is the Whopper burger?"
Now, for any viewers with a Google Home near their TV, that phrase prompts a speaker to begin reading the Wikipedia entry for the sandwich. It's a clever way of capturing viewers' attention, but it's reinvigorating the debate over voice devices like Google Home and Amazon's Alexa. Now, anticipation is growing ahead of the release of the Samsung S8 smartphone next week. The tech giant is betting, in fact, that the device, jam-packed with features and a slick design, can take back the top spot in global smartphone sales. Bloomberg Technology consumer tech reporter Mark Gurman got a sneak preview of the device and reviewed it on his new webcast, Gadgets with Gurman, that airs every Wednesday online. And he joins us right now. Let's reenact the Gadgets with Gurman a little bit. Hold up your gadget and show us what this S8 has got to offer us.
So here you go. This is the S8 Plus. This is the bigger one. And it's really interesting because it has a really big screen. It's 6.2 inches, and it's quite a bit larger than the screen on the iPhone 7 Plus. But they removed the bezels and actually integrated the home button into the screen itself. So it's actually smaller, even though it has a bigger screen, than the big iPhone. So it's really compact.
You like it?
I like it. I think it's going to give a lot of other phone makers a run for their money. I think that there's a new trend developing of super small phones with big screens, and by that I mean integrating more features into the display and wrapping around glass and slimming down the bezels. So I think that Samsung is the first big phone maker to get there, and we'll see what Apple has up its sleeves later this year.
And what's interesting, of course, is the frenemy relationship between Samsung and Apple. And whenever a curved screen comes out, many feel that maybe it's not just Samsung that's going to be supplying itself, but maybe it'll dine out if Apple goes that direction as well.
Right. I mean, it's interesting because Samsung, they have their mobile arm, but also their display arm, and they say there's a really defined split between the two, that there's no preference, for supplying displays to the mobile division. But you always see Samsung well ahead of the competition, not only Apple, but the other players too, in terms of their smartphone displays.
Talk to us, though, about AI. Talk to us about Bixby and why perhaps the voice-activated helper is being delayed here in the US.
Right. It's a bit interesting and surprising. AI is difficult, and really understanding the accents. I mean, if I started talking to it and then you started talking to it with your accent, we have two different accents, and determining who is who and what each of us are saying is difficult. Of course, Siri and Alexa and Google Assistant all have had similar troubles, but Bixby is still new. But the disappointing part is that this was supposed to be a blockbuster feature of the phone.
And let's talk to us about Gadgets with Gurman, because I can't wait. It's every Wednesday. Where can I see it? How can I see it? And can you please come on and show us on TV too?
Yeah, sure. So it's every Wednesday at 12:30 Pacific, 3:30 Eastern Time. And it's a really exciting show because we talk a lot about financials, but a really key component of the financials are the products that drive those results. And what we want to do at Gadgets with Gurman is supplement that by explaining what the new devices are, why they're important, why people either should use them or what those devices could do better. And we're really trying to keep it exciting by doing exclusive takes on new devices, showing things that people have really not shown before. It was really exciting to have the S8 as our first one, given that the phone doesn't come out until next Friday. And we're hoping to do really great episodes with unique gadgets, for the foreseeable future.
Bloomberg.com? Is that where I get
Yeah, you can see it at Bloomberg's website. You can see it on Facebook as well as on Twitter. So we're on all the big platforms.
All the big social media platforms and online. Gadgets with Gurman. You have got to tune in. There it is. You can see the designs for the show right there. Now, that does it for this particular edition of Bloomberg Technology. Remember, all episodes are now live streaming on Twitter. Check us out, why don't you, at Bloomberg Tech TV, weekdays, 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. That's all for now. This is Bloomberg.